Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it is I, your host, McLateral, aka McLateral FF, on the Twitter. It has been a hell of a week. It's been a hell of a week. It's been a very busy week. I got a vacation coming up. I'm looking very much forward to it. And so, of course, I could not have more things on my plate. I decided it would be fun to get a Chromebook. So I'm testing multiple Chromebooks right now. I got one, and then it took me 2 days to even get to the point where I could open it. I've been working on a column. I am hopeful that that will come out sometime before I go on vacation. And in the meantime, we've just had to deal with all the camp news, all the excitement, all the people getting angry on Twitter about which running back is going to fail and make you look like an idiot. Which I think in my case, it's which one's going to succeed and make you look like an idiot. And it's definitely going to be Mike Davis. Like, rest assured, if Mike Davis plays a full 17 as the Falcons starter, I am going to look like a moron. There is no way around it. On the other hand, though, I'm hedging my bets a little on Joe Mixon. I'm drinking the Chris Evans Kool-Aid a little. You know, I get that it's only camp. I get that it's just, some OTA hype. But Samaje Perine, if you're on your third team already and it's been like 4 seasons, I am not that concerned about you. So, like, Chris Evans, someone to keep in mind, someone to keep on the radar, possibly the next big thing coming out of Cincinnati. But I do know what the next big thing coming out of the DMV is, and it is your boy Herms. What up?
Oh, dude, look at that segue. Oh my gosh, that was so good. Oh, yes. Oh, fantastic. Oh, you love to see it, folks. You love to see it.
And I love to see you, man. Like, we have not done a live stream together, I think, in a while. I think since the draft. Was that the last one we did?
Because it was, the NFL draft. But then before that, I want to say it was like January.
It had been a
while. Oh, jeez, dude.
It had definitely been a minute. Well, it is awesome to have you here. I'm very much looking forward to it. Just like I've been looking forward to recording our brand new flagship podcast with you every week, The Lateral Show. It is fantastic. You can go find it on Spotify. If you read this ticker at the bottom, once it rolls all the way through, you'll see exactly what I just said.
There.
And we've been going through some positional breakdowns, kind of how we tackle each position. We've already done QB, RB, wide receiver. Holy shit, we've had 3 episodes.
Yeah, dude, right? Oh, it's gone by so fast. Oh, jeez. And it's so much fun. Oh my god, dude, it's been a blast so far. Like,
it really has. And that means the tightest events are coming up. That's dude. Right. Breaking news. The tight ends are coming up.
Which the tight ends are coming. Oh.
Probably about an hour about Cole Kmet, right? If we're being conservative.
I think that's probably a fair expectation. And the more I think about it, I mean, like, who were we having a conversation about not all that long ago? Who did they add? The Bears also on top of that? Like,
but the literal tightest events.
Yes, Jake Butt. What's up? So, if that doesn't say anything about, the future of what, I don't even know. I wanted to throw the Butt in there. What's up, Dave? Oh, hello.
What's up, Rob?
Hi, Rob. Oh.
Trust me, I see your comments. They do not go unnoticed. But what also doesn't go unnoticed is the fact that I do have my wonderful co-founder, would that be the correct term, from The Lateral, joining me here tonight. We could pretend it's because I couldn't find a guest. We could pretend it was on purpose. But what's important is, for real, you're here. So let's get into it, man. You are, of course, Herms, at Herms NFL, co-founder of The Lateral, co-editor at The Lateral, though I think we go with editor-in-chief as a title for you as well there. You're a content creator. You are my co-host on the podcast. You were an original co-host and producer of this show until you started your own show, the show with no name. You've been doing a ton of written content for us. You're currently working on helping us put together our rankings, which we've been dabbling with the QBs. I think we're going to drop those in July. We're going to drop QB, running back, wide receiver, tight end. It's going to be me. It's going to be Herms. It's going to be Jesse from Bacon Games, who also contributes for the Lateral. And it's, of course, going to be Zachy, who is our third person. What up? But today, you get the guest treatment. And so we should start where I start with all my guests. And that is, how'd you get into fantasy sports? A question I don't think I've actually ever asked you.
Well, our former fifth grade teacher that we have in common, name redacted, when he wasn't doing his Civil War summer camp, he would do his fantasy sports camp every single year. So I would just go to that from ages 9 to 17, sometimes multiple times a summer. And I went with both of my siblings, both of whom you know.
I think we did 1 year together.
I think we did at one point, and I think your
might have been like the last one that I did,
possibly. And I remember going with your brother. Shout out, name redacted. I think he went once, but and because I've showed the trophies before. If something falls over, forgive me, but this is always a treat. I still have my first ever fantasy baseball trophy.
Oh,
and it is a 15-year-old bottle of Yoo-Hoo.
Oh my God, that's right, the Yoo-Hoos.
Yeah, dude.
What was they do? I think it was cereal for the fantasy football, correct?
Yes.
And then I think hockey was the Mondos, which were for those of you who don't know, I think they were knockoff Kool-Aids. Basically, the knockoff Kool-Aid jammers or whatever it was.
Pretty much.
I think I might have gotten one of those. I think fantasy hockey was the one I ended up doing surprisingly well. And though, of course, the one that always stuck with me was fantasy golf, because he would come up with the nicknames for these guys. And fantasy golf always stuck with me. Stuart in the sink. It's just that. People talk about this saying lives rent free. Yes, there was a fantasy sports camp. It was awesome. And yeah, that Yoo-Hoo is definitely 15 years old.
Trust me. An old ass bottle of Yoo-Hoo.
Yeah. Herms and I go way back. I've known him since he was probably 6?
It's 6 or 7. Yeah. Something like that.
It's like that. That bottle is definitely 15 years old. No questions about that. Man. Yeah. What a blast from the past. So, obviously you had the fantasy sports camp. But then how did you when did you start really getting into a bunch of leagues with your friends, I guess? Because I feel like that's where a lot of us start, really getting serious and passionate.
Yeah, dude, because having gone through summer after summer after summer at the camp, never winning fantasy football. I have a trophy for every other sport. I won every other sport, but I never won fantasy football, and it haunts me. So I did a few free leagues on ESPN and stuff, but those don't because it's one of those things where it's 9 of the people will just draft their team and never check it again.
Mm-hmm.
But then I tried to keep in the spirit of the camp and have an in-person league where we scored it all by hand and all that, but that was just too much. So I needed to find a league with people that I knew. And then I remember, I think it was either you or shout out the commission, name redacted, had mentioned that there was a spot in the existing league that stems from the punk and metal scene at, shout out the Point of Rocks Community Center. So just
Cooter Doodle's here.
Oh my gosh, hello. Oh, hello. It's Matthew Barry's Fantasy Life. Oh my God. But
watch it actually have been Matthew Barry and we just totally blew it.
Oh, damn it. Well, if it's you, Matthew, hello. But yeah, so because you were originally in the league and it was,
I was there in the NFL.com days.
Yeah. Cause it was my understanding that you already had that 10-team league and then you were looking to expand to 12. And I was one of the, yes, I was an original expansion team.
There we go.
Yeah. Numbers are hard. But because my first year anyway, we did NFL.com. And then that also reminds me of the Terrell Pryor debacle.
Okay. Do you want to enlighten people on the Terrell Pryor debacle real quick? Because the best part was it had no bearing on what actually happened whatsoever.
Yeah, because I remember we were at our
Guido's.
favorite. Yeah, shout out Guido's. Yeah, our favorite, stoner metal bar. Yeah. And then, dude, I'm still so sad. And we were negotiating a trade, and I remember
the deal of the century.
The deal of the century. I had given you Terrell Pryor and who else? And I got Eric Decker. And Jordan Reed. Like
yeah. But no, the big piece was like Eric Decker and Terrell Pryor.
Yeah, like it shows how long ago that was. But like, and then there was like a weird because it's like I don't know, like you had seen a report that like and then it just became like a whole thing. And it was like
literally, we made the trade, and then 30 minutes later, I think Eric Decker was injured.
So it was just
we were still at the bar. And I'm like, dude, this is a breaking news alert. Like, here it is. You're literally seeing this at the same time as me. Like, I swear, I did not hoodwink you. I did not bamboozle you. And then the best part was the reason we did this trade in the first place was because I wanted Terrell Pryor because they thought he was possibly going to get QB reps. Because he was in Cleveland at the time, right? And the quarterback situation was so bad.
This would have been Taysom Hill before Taysom Hill.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like that type of shit. So
then it becomes a whole nother thing because Charlie Herms wants to veto the trade because Eric Decker's injured. And then everyone else in the league wants to veto the trade because I'm going to put Terrell Pryor in at the flex, potentially as a QB, before the days of Superflex really being a thing. And I'm just like, look, these are the rules of the game. I got in a trade. It was in good faith. Then the guy got injured. That's not my fault. I think the other guy might have been Spencer Ware.
Yeah.
I think Spencer Ware was involved.
Somehow. That became
back in the day
a whole thing, man. And
literally, I had to get, I think, booted from like the league chat temporarily, while
so
people
that we
voted on it.
Yeah, because we both left so that they voted, and then they added us when they reached the conclusion. Dude, just shout out home leagues, man.
I think my words were, if you veto this trade, you're only doing it because you're salty. You didn't think of it first. And then Terrell Pryor got no snaps at quarterback. None of it mattered.
Oh my god!
Neither of us won the league. Oh man.
Yeah, but it was really nice just to be in a league like that for the first time ever, really.
Yeah.
Because I mean, fantasy sports camp, I had other campers that would show up and have rivalries that way, but it's not quite.
You can't talk shit to your 5th grade teacher. It's a little different.
Exactly. So it's one of those things where I was and I was so I hadn't really played too much over the last couple of years, paid attention to the NFL either, because at the time, as you're well aware, we were, really active in the music scene at that point. So sports wasn't really the priority, but because I made the playoffs, I lost to whoever in the second round. And then the shame of not winning the league and just in how those flashbacks to never winning at fantasy sports camp, it all hit me. And I was like, you know what? Not again. Not again. I'm going to get so into this and I'm going to win this league and it's going to be great. So it's that's when I just really started taking it seriously, because I was just I'm not going to lose to these people. I refuse to lose to these people. And I've ended up doing pretty well since then. And, I think that work's really paid off. And, that spiraled into us constantly having debates about our takes and our, different, well, who's the best waiver wire move this week? And it wouldn't even just be about our, one league together. It would just be we would talk about other leagues that we're in and doing all this shit and evaluating it that way. So that last year when I came up with the idea, 2 years ago when I came up with the idea to start doing something like this, it was just maybe, but who has the free time? And then, you lived through 2020. You're aware of what happened.
Yeah.
We got the free time, and look at where we are now, folks. The Lateral.
It's very true. So yeah, so really that passion to like be better at the sport, that's what got you into like really paying attention, really doubling down. I remember the difference because like you went from being like I can read the stat sheet and I'll be fine guy to okay, I'm like watching every Sunday. Like there are just some things you cannot get from the raw numbers. You're just going to miss some things. So you kind of touched on it with how we sort of started the Lateral, but like, how did you get into actually creating content? Because the Lateral was not your first rodeo.
It was not. Actually, fun fact, when Bleacher Report was still like one of those things where it was like, all the articles and stuff were just like sourced from like people who like created accounts and all that shit. Like, I mean, I always wanted to, dabble in certain things in like sports journalism, I guess. So, I mean, like I did a little bit of that when I was like super young and had no business writing anything. And then when I was in college, I worked for the student newspaper. I covered the baseball team and, a bunch of stuff like that. So it's like I already kind of had like a little bit of a background in like, writing like articles in like a certain format and like all this shit and like trimming it down and editing it and just like having it beat over my head where it's just like, you have to take stuff out. You have to take stuff out, just like really, which is funny because some of my articles, as you know, just still end up painfully long, but either way, it's like, yeah. So, I mean, like walking into the, like, I was, glad to at least have a little bit of that experience. And, yeah, so, I mean, like that was really cool. And like, I thought about going to school for journalism, but like in there, as you know, there are really good programs in like.
I mean, Maryland's is fantastic.
Yeah,
Kevin Blackistone would teach there of ESPN fame.
Yeah, shout out around the horn, whoo! But unfortunately, as you are well aware, having a good GPA never really been my strong suit. So like, like. I'm a smart guy, but maybe not super disciplined per se.
Yeah,
so
happens.
Like, yeah, so I mean, like that kind of, but I don't know. This felt like, like the next best thing because it was just like, okay, well, I'm not going to cover the Washington Nationals for the Washington Post anytime soon, but hey, I really like doing this thing. There's a community for this. There's a whole thing for this. Why not? Let's give it a go. So, I mean, yeah, dude, and like we used to have our own sports podcast that I think ran 3 or 4 episodes, and I listened to it the other day, and wow, have we really improved our skills? Because holy shit, like, dude, like,
what was it like? March Madness was like kind of when we had started things up because I think we wanted to hit like March Madness and the baseball season, and like I think we had joked initially about like making it Mac and Chaz at one point because Charles. Chaz and like mac and cheese. What did we land on? Riding the bench
with Charles and Mac. That was
my God.
Yeah, dude. Shout out. And but yeah, and like, oh dude, and but I don't know. Like I think,
by the way, my dog is like right here. I'm not just looking down and like moving my hand for no reason. He's feeling a little needy today.
Oh, dude. Shout out dogs. 100%. Big fan.
Finn's a good boy.
Oh, absolutely. 100%. Big fan of that dog. But yeah, dude. I mean, so like, and that's so between like my background doing shit, but also our background doing shit together, because not only a sports podcast, but like we've been in bands together, we've written a couple songs together. I mean, like we've collaborated on a bunch of different shit. So like obviously, like I knew that this would be a massive undertaking by myself. So like naturally, the first person I thought of was just like the person I had collaborated on with a bunch of other shit, and also the person I frequently argue with about fantasy football the most. So it's just like, yeah, there it is. Like, boom, like 2 peas in a pot, literally, because now it's a podcast. See, that was a very cleverly crafted joke. You see what I did there?
I did. You know what? You've earned it.
Oh,
segue.
There it is. Segue.
But seriously, I think it is time to segue. I think we've talked enough about the background, as glorious as it may have been. Let's get into like something that like you're really passionate about when it comes to the fantasy analysis. And I think that is like your RB rankings and like really delving in on running backs. So like, how do you tackle evaluating a running back?
Oh man, I mean, like, I don't know. I'm a clinically insane person, so like the way, like my process for doing a lot of different shit is always like kind of weird and wonky. But like, there's just, I don't know. I mean, obviously, like stripping it down to like its essential level and then just building from there, I think is the most important thing to do. So like, I like to go division by division, team by team, and just like look at, like what certain coordinators or whatever like trends they have in terms of like how often they end up, running the ball certain times a game, how often they throw to the running backs, all that stuff, to put together some sort of understanding of how I can like project it forward a little bit. But at the same time, like I'm not using a projections model. Like I'm not like a math dude by any means, but just like, I don't know, historical trends, all that. And then at that point, once all that's figured out, I go in and break down just like, who's going to get the primary amount of touches in this running back room, and then just go like, this is the RB1, this is the RB2, this is the RB3, or you find like 1A, 1B situations, all that type of shit, and just do that for every team. And then at a certain point, I throw it all together. I put a list, because I remember we were having a conversation about this. A lot of people like to use Google Sheets and all that stuff, or like make spreadsheets.
Shocker that people like to use spreadsheets for numbers. Yes. Breaking news.
But you learned recently that I have one insanely long Google Doc of notes and one Google Doc of just the ranks. Taco, what's up, dude? Howdy. But yeah, and like that's it. Like my thoughts super unorganized. It's ridiculous.
Everyone's got their process. Like for me, I've got a color-coded spreadsheet now. It's like one thing I kind of picked up from like the Dynasty people, where it's like all this rookie analysis and stuff like that, and like all these stats. I'm just like, you know what? Color coding shit actually like makes you able to visualize it a lot easier, because the more green I see, the more I'm like, okay, this is something. And the more red I see, it's just like, oh, that's kind of a problem.
Yeah, well, that's why they, picked the colors for stoplights and stuff, because certain colors, evoke certain emotions. Very,
by the way, maybe. Like, totally sucks for people that are red-green colorblind.
Oh my God, I have never thought about that. Holy shit!
Well, that's why there's an order. It's not. Okay, like, that's why there isn't just one literal light.
Although I will say, what if that's like? Imagine how confusing that would be, because like there are certain parts of the country where instead of it being vertical, it's horizontal. And like if you're not used to that and you're like, like red, green, that could be different.
I think the one thing that's there is like we typically in our English society and really like our Latin-based languages, Greek-based languages, we read left to right. So the lights also go left to right. Now if you were colorblind and like from Saudi Arabia, maybe then it would be a problem because you'd be going, right to left. But then we're getting into a really niche hypothetical scenario. So we should go into something a little more tangible, which again, the running back evaluation. So is there a particular factor that you find yourself weighing more than some of the other ones, or do you keep it pretty balanced?
I absolutely adore the pass catchers, because we play PPR, and it's actually, no, I'm going to change my answer, because when it comes to like the top guys, like we know who the top guys are. You know what I mean? Yeah. Breaking news. I've changed my mind. But like when it comes to the top guys or whatever, it's the guys that run the ball a lot and catch the ball a lot, do both things or whatever. But I like to find the dudes that, because the argument's always like, oh, well, they don't really catch the ball that often. Or like, oh, all they do is catch the ball. And it's just like, okay, sure. But points are points.
Yeah, if they're doing that all the time. I mean, we saw that with J.D. McKissick and Naheem Hines. It's like, if all you do is catch the ball, but you're catching the ball all the time, it's no longer a negative. It's a negative when you're like comparing yourself against Christian McCaffrey, but it's not a negative when you're like comparing yourself against Ronald Jones, who is good.
Do not besmirch the name of Rojo.
Oh, I'm very much Team Rojo this year, actually. It's been an interesting twist of fate.
Yeah. And, and the interesting thing that I always hear, and I understand where the narrative comes from, whereas the whole is just like, no, I wish they would just trust him in the backfield, because like, especially early on in his career, it was always just a really irritating split between him and Peyton Barber. But last year, if you look at just like the raw rushing numbers, they did trust Ronald Jones as the primary guy, and it went really well.
I actually had a conversation with, I want to say it's Jeff Bell, for whom the bell tolls. That the right guy? Yeah. So I had a conversation with him on Twitter about this sort of thing. And in it, I was doing some research. And yeah, Ronald Jones had 197 rushing attempts last year, I think. And then Leonard Fournette had 90 something. It was the next closest guy.
Yeah.
And they give Ronald Jones a fair amount of targets. He had 40 targets, I think 2 years in a row over the past 2 years. So I hope nobody in Scott Fishbowl is watching this, especially if they're in my division, because in mocks, I've been getting him in the 10th round and it's been fantastic.
Yeah. And keep in mind, those numbers are from 14 games played and only 13 started. So assuming a little bit better luck in that department, I mean, hey, and here's the caveat. I understand. It's Leonard Fournette got cut by Jacksonville and came over late. Sure, time to acclimate into the offense. I get it. Whatever is what it is. But even that being said, Rojo still did it, damn it. He still did it.
Yeah, it really took him getting injured for Fournette to have a big role outside of games where just they went really heavy on the RBs.
Yeah, because playoff Lenny, Lombardi Lenny, or whatever.
I can't believe that's a thing now.
If I remember correctly, against the local Washington football team in the playoffs, I think Ronald Jones tweaked something during warmups, and they held him out of the game, and that's why Leonard Fournette went out there. He did well, and he kind of held on to that. So it's just I mean, it's recency bias is what it is. I get it. No, it honestly, Taco, it really doesn't, because it's just
not as a complete write-off. Again,
yes,
this is a guy who contributed in a meaningful way in a playoff run. They brought him back, but they didn't bring him back for a ton. They brought him back because they brought everyone back. That team thinks they can win a Super Bowl. They just do. And you know what? If I'm betting money on it, I'm probably betting it on them. I think they're a very complete team. But the short answer is I still think Ronald Jones is the starter on that team, and it's because of the workload that he's been given year after year, and it's only increased.
Yeah. I couldn't have said it any better myself. But
cool.
Actually, you know what I want to do? What I want to point out, though, in terms of just running back stuff?
Yeah.
There's a guy. There is a guy. And because you were talking about earlier, we're going to be coming out with our rankings. This one might be, I don't know how surprising it's going to be, but I've been, retooling, doing all this stuff. You know who I have as my RB5 at this point?
No, I actually don't. Najee, really?
Check it out, baby. Breaking news, Najee Harris, RB5. I'm dude, I keep looking at it. I keep going, and as other people know, I'm a Steelers fan. So is there a certain amount of bias? Honestly, no, there isn't. And here's the thing. Today, we saw the news of David DeCastro walking, and people are like, oh my God, what are they doing? It's well, take whatever, stock in, PFF shit that you want to. Not a very good run blocker at all. He was a big part of the problem. Alejandro Villanueva walking, kind of part of the problem. Is what it is.
I've heard even with DeCastro, that he might be retiring.
Yeah, I mean, because for as much as these dudes, have given to the offensive line of the Pittsburgh Steelers in the past, it's just, it got bad. But I feel confident in how they're retooling the line. I feel confident in Kendrick Green, especially because, dude, one of the reasons that I think his stock got hurt and falling into the third round, the guard that they drafted out of Illinois, is because he split time between guard and center and never really established a spot or a consistent position. In a world in which he had been able to do that, I feel as though his stock would have been higher, to the point where it's dude, his run blocking skills, absolutely incredible. Pat Fryermuth coming in as a tight end. I think, I spoke about this on something that will be dropping eventually that I was a part of. Shout out John June, homie. Eric Ebron probably not going to see the field nearly as much because Pat Fryermuth is a more complete tight end, not only as a receiver, but also very skilled blocker. Zach Banner coming back, doing all that shit. The offensive line, is it a good offensive line? No. But is it nearly as bad as people say it is? Objectively speaking, I really don't think it's that bad, specifically for run blocking.
And I don't really disagree. For me, I just think that that's a team that will pass a decent amount. Last year they were like meh, both in terms of team running back targets and team running back rushes. But I mean, JB Chope, contemplating him in the top 12, I would say, even though I'm not as bullish as Herms, I would stop contemplating and I would just put him there because I have him at RB12 and I don't see him going lower.
Who's taking touches away? Who?
Yeah, I mean, no one. But on the other hand, you still got guys like Jonathan Taylor, who the Colts like throw the ball to the running back a ton and run the ball with the running back a ton. You got someone like Dalvin Cook who gets like literally almost 100. The team runs the ball almost 100 more times. And Dalvin Cook's got as much of a stranglehold on that position as Najee would. I mean, they're just some guys that like have to be ahead, I think. But I mean, he's certainly in the RB1 conversation. I think he will finish at an RB1. I'm just not quite top 5 bullish.
Yeah. For me, it's just the team moves and, Matt Canada being the new offensive coordinator. Like, I think based off of like the personnel shifts, also bringing in guard former Pro Bowler Trey Turner today on that 1-year deal. I think that's going to be super helpful as well. I think we're going to see a return back to Steelers football. So
I have to say, by the way, Matt Canada being a part of that squad doesn't actually be an improvement to me. Like, Matt Canada was a very mediocre part of a very mediocre Maryland team. Like, I don't actually like, everyone's talked about like, oh, Matt Canada this, Matt Canada that. And they talked about when they hired him in Maryland. And like, he definitely, I think like, I don't think he's anything special.
Oh, neither do I, but it's still an upgrade over what we had. You know what I mean? So it's just like,
yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that this team is going to look a lot more like it did in the Le'Veon Bell days.
I could see
more
that.
So than it has over the last couple of years.
I could see that.
So, like, is RB5 a little too high? Like, I don't know. Probably. I don't give a shit. But
it's not outside of the range of outcomes.
Yeah, just because, like, the shift in player personnel, it looks like they're trying to build a team that is going to be able to successfully run a lot more. And like we were talking about before, it's just like these dudes that just get massive shares of the workload, like Kalen Ballage, Benny Snell, Anthony McFarland.
Kalen Ballage was actually a significant contributor in fantasy and the NFL last season. He
was pretty good.
I think Kalen Ballage is actually solid. I think he could potentially spell Najee if they needed to at times. That being said, I do expect Najee Harris to have pretty close to a bell cow role, if not an actual bell cow role.
Yeah, because I mean, like, honestly, like, it's 300 touches. He's walking into it immediately.
Though, if I will say though, we go back to Matt Canada. No concerns about Anthony McFarland suddenly having a role in this offense.
No.
I know that the talent isn't there, but you know what? Matt Canada is, and Matt Canada thought that the talent might have been there at some point when they were both at Maryland. Like, I'm just saying, I didn't even think about that till now.
No, but people, it's like McFarland is one of those people in the community that we like to refer to as fetch players, where it's just like we can keep saying it however much we want, but like, you're not going to make it happen. Some things just aren't going to happen. So it's just like Anthony McFarland is a fetch player, and we need to let go of that. And like, do I think I think he's talented. I think that he could be a productive part of a different offense, but in what the Steelers have put together, it's just like, I don't see an impactful role for him, to be honest.
No, I would agree. If Matt Canada jokes aside.
Yeah. But, if for any reason Najee Harris got hurt and they had to go with some sort of like, hell yeah. And we had to go for some form of like, one dude just being the between the tackles dude and then one guy being the pass catcher. It's like, okay, like the lane would open up then for McFarland. Jalen Samuel's still involved somehow. But like, yeah, either
for
way,
that's the only Samuels will be involved for a game, and then he will prove that he's not good enough to be the lead running back.
100%.
They'll move on to someone else.
Yeah, because there were rumors last offseason he was going to get cut, like the fact that he ended up even making the team kind of surprised me. But like, hey, even because, bringing in McFarland, doing all this shit, bringing in Kalen Ballage, it's just like the writing might be on the wall. Who knows? Yeah. Keep an eye out for that.
I still like Kalen Ballage as a potential handcuff. Like if Najee Harris, if something, God forbid, were to happen, like I would want to be getting Kalen Ballage. That's the guy who I'd want to get.
There's
but like not in a draft. I wouldn't draft him as a handcuff. But sure. I'm saying like in a waiver wire situation, if like everyone's going to be like, oh man, who's the guy on the Pittsburgh backfield? We got to get like. I actually think Kalen Ballage might be the most talented guy not named Najee Harris in that backfield.
It's possible, and this is a discussion we had a lot last offseason, just in terms of like I'm very, very confident in the beat reporters who cover that team. They are very, very good at that shit. And also the coaching staff, typically honest. They don't really hold back a whole lot.
Not a ton of bullshit comes out of Pittsburgh.
Exactly. And a lot of the chatter, last year was just like, hey, like these people really trust Benny Snell. If anything ever happened to James Conner, it would be Benny Snell. And look at what happened. It ended up being Benny Snell when shit happened to James Conner. So Snell was not super effective when trusted last year. So is there a world in which Ballage could earn the trust over?
I mean, they brought him in for a reason.
I can see it. So just like, the Pittsburgh Steelers beat reporters, watch whatever the fuck they have to say. They're cool as shit. And also, I think that speaks a lot to the possibility of like, is, Chase Claypool going to take a step forward in the offense next year? It's like, I don't know. Just the way that the offense has traditionally ran over the last several years, just like the role that he has, the whole thing is schemed around, like Ben Roethlisberger's preferences. And the fact that he typically likes, the dude in the Deontay Johnson role who used to be, the AB, just like pepper, pepper, pepper. And then second best option was always the guy in the slot. And then, homeboy field stretcher or whatever. Like, that's just not something Ben really utilized a whole lot. But, it'd be what it be. But also, how about Myles Gaskin? I feel like people are just, like, completely rejecting the fact that, like, we all thought that the Dolphins were going to do something with running back, but they really didn't. So there's no reason to doubt Myles Gaskin at this point, is there? Like,
it's funny that this gets brought up because, as I mentioned in my monologue, I've been testing out some Chromebooks because I want to be able, like, me, my girlfriend will like watch TV, have dinner. I want to be able to have someone where it's like I can just crank out some content on. And for one of my test videos, I was like, oh, I'll hop onto Player Profiler, see what I can find, test out the screen sharing, et cetera, et cetera. And I looked at Jared Dokes' Player Profiler, and I think I'm less impressed now. I actually don't know that there's much competition in that backfield. I'm kind of back in on Myles Gaskin. Not that I was like hugely out to begin with. I thought I was actually fairly bullish on him. He's my RB22, and I say that actually with not having adjusted my rankings based on anything I'm talking about right now. Like, I've got him right around Josh Jacobs and David Montgomery. Like, you should be drafting him, and he is falling late.
I've got him at 24, and I feel pretty damn good about it. And even then, just looking at my rankings right now, there are some people that, you could make the argument, for Gaskin over, because, I mean, I have him one spot behind Chase Edmonds. If you really told me Myles Gaskin over Chase Edmonds, fine, because the aforementioned James Conner, if he, for some reason, was able to, stay more, healthy this past year. Also, actually, now I'm going to stop that rant because we addressed this in a mailbag segment on the Lateral Show. You can go back to the running back episode and actually you can hear our thoughts on that. I'll stop it there and give a teaser. Please listen to the show. But also around this range, Ronald Jones, do not besmirch the name of Rojo. I could see the argument for that also. And I only have him a couple spots behind, Javonte Williams. How long is it going to take for him to earn that job? Whatever. If you're looking for somebody that, can contribute a little earlier for your redraft team, because that's what we cover here, redraft, then like, sure, I don't know, whatever. Either way, like, it be what it be. Like, I don't know. Like,
So he was like 11th in points per game last year. So again, to Austin's point, like, he was pretty good. I would say with loving his situation, I still love his ability to dominate that backfield. But they gave a fair amount of rushing attempts to their running backs last year. They were like kind of middle of the pack as far as NFL teams go. They were a little lower when it came to RB targets. I think that in theory, if they have more offensive weapons, which they do, they now have Will Fuller, they have Jalen Waddle. They went and got Jalen Waddle with a very high pick. They want to unleash Tua in theory. So, like, could Myles Gaskin be in the middle of the RB2 pack? Yes. Like, I expect his points per game to go down just because I expect him to be utilized a little less, because I expect the running backs in Miami to be utilized a little less.
Yeah, and just the change in offensive coordinator from Chan Gailey to like the split duty that they have now with the two dudes whose names I can't remember off the top of my head. Like, yeah, we're going to see a shift in the scheme a little bit, and also to your point, just like yes, it's it also kind of goes back to the conversation we were having about the Steelers. Off season, like whenever you bring in new player personnel, especially like in certain areas on your team, it certainly indicates, hey, we're gonna try and do a little more of this or a little more of that. So yeah, I mean, I'm definitely with you on that. But like in the aggregate, like he should still be fine. And I've seen the arguments from people being like, oh, like I mean, Salvin Ahmed did really well too, but it's like, yeah, but keep in mind, I mean, the only reason he really got some run is because of that whole shit. Because like, didn't Gaskin get COVID and then have like, what was it, like a leg thing or whatever? So,
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so it's like
Salvin Ahmed was
the opportunity, sure, but like Gaskin still did better.
Ahmed was an undrafted free agent that got cut by the 49ers and then landed in Miami. Like, I don't expect them to necessarily want to go to him over Gaskin if they think Gaskin's good enough. And I think it's like becoming apparent, like Gaskin's probably good enough. One thing I just wanted to say, though.
Wasn't Gaskin a 7th round pick that got cut from the Niners as well?
I don't know about that.
Fun facts. Yeah. I think I remember that being a thing and just it being very amusing, and also speaks to like, hey, shout out Kyle Shanahan. He really knows how to find those running backs, man. Good for him.
There's only so much room on the roster. The one thing I did want to say, though, the RB rushes and targets that I just commented on, you brought up a good point. They are changing the OC, and I think the numbers I have in my rankings are actually the numbers I'm projecting them to have this year based on that OC change rather than their actual numbers last year. So
gotcha.
Just wanted to point them out. I've got them projected for like 390 carries for that RB room and 100 targets for that RB room. And the 390 is actually like kind of middle of the pack, and then the 100 it's like, eh. But let's move on to a different position. Let's move on to quarterbacks. We're getting into the group segments portion of the show. Those of you who have been on the show before, you know how that works. Those of you who've watched the show, you got an idea of how it works. But we're the group today, so we'll see how that goes. And the first thing that we are going to do is we are going to do second-year QB breakouts, and that's how Vamp is done. So second-year QB breakouts, we love them. We try and get a guy like a Lamar Jackson, a Kyler Murray, Pat Mahomes, a Carson Wentz. The list goes on, even though that's all the list that I can think of at the moment. But regardless, we got to pick one for this year. And Herms, I want to hear, who is your second-year QB breakout and why?
So I've thought a lot about this, and before I give my actual answer, I will say that in a world where Joe Burrow wasn't coming off such a horrible leg injury, like it may take time for him to trust planting and, really putting some oomph into it. Like that would have been the clear answer for me.
Sure.
But, we're going to need to see a little more about that. I'm going to trust the doctors on that one because that's what we at the Lateral do. We trust doctors. Subliminal messaging. But for me, I think it's yes, get your vaccine. Please do it. Just listen to doctors. Science. Woo, shout out. Jalen Hurts. That's my guy. And, and we talked about this when we did our quarterback evaluation episode, the debut episode of the Lateral Show. Rushing is not necessarily like the end all be all for like quarterbacks, as we found out when we were looking at certain numbers, but it also like it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt. It only serves to help, and it boosts floor. So even players like looking back in the past, Tyrod Taylor in his days with the Buffalo Bills, it's like even when the passing numbers weren't necessarily gaudy, you knew that you had a reliable starter for your fantasy team just based off of the virtue of his rushing floor alone. And then whenever he had really good throwing games, it was just a bonus on top of that. And like, hey, have a party, woohoo! I think Jalen Hurts is actually a pretty good passer. Now, did he have certain deficiencies throwing across the middle of the field, doing stuff like, I mean, like, it wasn't great. But I think one of the more underrated aspects of his game is his ability to throw to the sideline. And I think we saw a lot of, we saw a little bit of that, in his days at Alabama, Roll Tide. And also, especially when he was, in his transfer year at Oklahoma doing all that shit. Like, say what you will about his, across the middle reads, but the down the sideline shit, very skilled with that. And there were plenty of examples of that. Like, I remember even the what was that game against the Cardinals, right? That dude, like we've seen, So like we've seen, like that is the ceiling legitimately. And and like one of the reasons, like, he was kind of like a weird prospect coming into the league, and justifiably so, because it's just like, I mean, he had this really great year at Oklahoma, but he also got dethroned because of certain errors, and like Tua Tagovailoa took over and blah blah. So what do we do with him? People like to think of him predominantly as just like, oh, he's just a mobile quarterback. It's like, is that a big part of his game? Sure. Can he run? Absolutely. Is he good at it? Totally. I think he's a better passer than he gets credit for. And
I would agree.
Assuming that Jalen Reagor can take a step forward, and like Devontae Smith, dude, that was a pretty significant investment on the part of the Philadelphia Eagles. Having Dallas Goedert in the fold, that's not bad. And also low key, something that we brought up in our most recent episode of the Lateral Show, like Kenny Gainwell, baby, Sure. Like that's another weapon. That's another weapon in the past.
There's a fair amount of weapons in Philadelphia. I don't know if their coaching staff is any good, but there is talent there.
Yeah. And it's just like, like I'm not super high on the offense, but like it cannot possibly be worse than it was last year. And a lot of what made it really difficult last year was the fact that the offensive line just got completely obliterated by injury. Assuming they have even average injury luck, quote unquote, it should be better. There should be more time for him to, stand and, make decisions before he throws the ball.
Sure.
So, it's just like, shout out Jalen Hurts. I think he's going to be pretty good. I'm pretty bullish. I have him at QB6.
Yeah, and I've got him at QB10. And I think I might ultimately move him up.
Yeah, but still, still top 12.
Yeah, I would agree.
Putting a second-year quarterback in your top 12, boom.
Here's the one thing I would say. So I agree he should be a top 12 quarterback. The issue is he's also being drafted that way. Jalen Hurts is overall 77, QB 10, and like going in 9 in Yahoo leagues, 12 in CBS leagues. So you are paying QB1 prices for a QB1 with him. And I think Joe Burrow has some similarities, though he's a little cheaper. You can get him like almost a whole round later.
And more talent around him as well.
More talent around him, though he does make some mistakes. He is coming off that injury. His like points per game wasn't amazing last year. Jalen's was significantly better. Like Jalen Hurts had tier 1 points per game as a quarterback. He had like 21.06 points per game when you actually look at the games where he was the starter, as opposed to what Fantasy Pros showed, because he literally was used as like a gadget guy for a play in every game. The guy who really interests me, though, is the guy who dethroned Jalen Hurts. That's Tua Tagovailoa, going at QB 22, overall 157. So here's the thing. You didn't necessarily have to spend a ton to get certain guys, like when Carson Wentz had his breakout. Honestly, like when Pat Mahomes and Lamar Jackson had their breakouts, they weren't the most expensive.
Remember how late I got Mahomes? I mean, dude.
Kyler Hurts' rushing upside is insane. Yes, this is definitely true. I think Tua, if he is healthy, if he's finally gotten over that injury, has some rushing upside to him. I think we talked about in our episode of the Lateral Show, our podcast that we do. Shout out to that. We talked about how first downs matter, whether you're getting them with your legs or through the air. And Tua, to me, could be the guy getting most of Miami's first downs, and you can get him for nothing. So I think I'm going to have a lot of Tua as my QB2. I'm going to take that extra roster spot to get a second QB because it will be him. And like I'll pair him with a Jalen Hurts or a Ryan Tannehill or a Joe Burrow or a Deshaun Watson, even something like that. Guys that like maybe like I'm not paying a huge premium for. They have QB1 potential, but maybe they have a question mark for whatever reason. And like I could just have Tua sitting on my bench, and if he kills it, then that's like someone I won't have spent a ton to get. And I could potentially trade him for something. Or if Jalen, totally bombs, then like maybe I can move Jalen to someone who's still a believer. It gives you a little more wiggle room. So like Tua to me is the guy I would say keep an eye on, because I think the jury's actually like kind of made its decision when it comes to Hurts and Burrow for their potential for next year. Whereas Tua is someone that you could really buy low on. So that's going to be my kind of contribution to this whole conversation.
And if we, combine my comments about Burrow and your comments about Tua, and also like, Loki, because I'm also a huge proponent of the, in redraft, draft 2 QBs, pick a young player and an established vet, and just like go with that shit. Like, huge fan of that. I think what we're really saying here is like, if you believe in Hurts and you want to pay that price, go for it, whatever. But are we saying buy the injury dip? Because that applies to
definitely saying buy the injury dip, because as I've mentioned before, my redraft QB1 is Dak Prescott.
Boom!
Like, he's going QB5. So, like, if I really wanted to spend a premium on QB, which I don't think that I will, but we'll see. I did it a little last year, though. I think I got Dak a little cheaper. And it paid off. I just, like, there's certain guys where it's like, does the situation feel right? I'm not going to buy it just because it's a, like, depreciating asset. So, like, Daniel Jones is, like, QB 25. I'm not going to buy him just because he's QB 25. The guy fumbles all the time. He doesn't throw the ball all that well. I'm sorry, Steffi, if you're listening. Your boy's just not that good.
Yeah. Big make or break year for him, though, because like the amount.
Because he won't be a starter next year if he doesn't do anything.
True, but I'm just saying.
Look at Mitch Trubisky. It's like, last year was a make or break year for Mitch Trubisky because he won't be an NFL starter if he sucks, which he did, and now he's not.
Not great, Bob. Not just, oh boy.
Oh. Some Danny Dimes love in the comments. Oh, that's unfortunate. It was going so well.
Ask Taco who his favorite team is.
I'm guessing it's the Giants.
Love you, Taco.
So Dave, I would say like one QB, I get the waiting hard and the only drafting one, but sometimes like I want to diversify the assets a little. Like I want to make sure that I've got a guy who's like really going to kill it for me. Especially
I don't do it on every team.
Yeah, it depends on how the draft goes, but like a lot of these times,
league tendencies for sure. Because like if you're in a league where a lot of people draft 2 anyway, then at that point, that's when you can deploy the, the vet young stud, 2 for 2, whatever. Tycoon, what's up? But this I get. Love you too, man. I dig the vibe. I dig the vibe.
Yeah, again, it's like easy to play waivers and matchups for stream. Like everyone says that, like, but only at the end of the year, one person wins the team. And it's like if you had Pat Mahomes and you had another quarterback, well, ultimately you didn't care because you ended up with a stud quarterback no matter what. And yes, you will see us at the Expo. Cannot wait for that. I think it really depends. Like, again, like I'm not going to rush to get Tua. Tua is going to be somewhere where it's like maybe I was drafting Nico Collins instead, something like that. Like I'm not like going like I'm going to get Tua here where I was planning on getting Rashad Bateman. But I think there's ways to do it. All right, let's move into the final portion of our hour-ish, which we are very closely approaching that hour-ish mark, and that is a fun little segment I like to call 2021 Fantasy Sleepers. So I want kind of a quick hitter on this one.
Gotcha.
Like kind of a minute on each, maybe. QB, wide receiver, running back, tight end. We'll start with QB. We'll each give one. Who is your QB sleeper for 2021?
Oh, geez.
And actually, real quick, while you're thinking about that, how do you personally define a sleeper?
We had a huge discussion about that just between the two of us. And that's why when we first started writing articles, instead of doing like, breakout, bust, and sleeper, we decided to add a fourth category that we called boom players. So like in our minds, we had agreed that like in order to be a sleeper, we have to project what did we decide on? Like a 2-tier jump, basically.
Something around this. I think it depended on the position, but it was basically like you are drafting someone who is not expected to be fantasy relevant, and then you are expecting them to be definitively fantasy relevant. So like if I draft Gabe Davis, hint, at his PPR ADP of 62, I believe. We just talked about this, actually, if you go and listen to the Lateral show on Spotify.
Dropped yesterday. Yeah. Good episode.
So Gabriel Davis, wide receiver 62. If he finishes in the top 36, that is definitely a sleeper. Like that is taking a guy who has now gone a couple tiers up. He went from non-fantasy relevant to fantasy relevant. I would say someone like Mike Williams at ADP 52. If he is top 36, that qualifies as a sleeper to me. I would say that Brandon Cooks at wide receiver 37 probably wouldn't classify as a sleeper to me. So that is how I look at it. And I think we ultimately kind of landed on the same page there, because Brandon Cooks you could view as a boom, where it's like he is fantasy relevant, but then he's going to vastly outperform his ADP. But he's already broken out. Like Brandon Cooks isn't a breakout player. He's already been good. The guy's walking 1,000 yards. So you can't really call him a breakout guy. So again, everything is a little subjective, but that's kind of where we landed on Russell Gage and Darnell Mooney. Also solid options. We'll get to wide receivers here in a minute. But for now, let's get to the QBs. Who is your QB sleeper?
Just looking at my rankings, and they had a connection on the New York Jets back in the day, even though shit was bad. The whole Darnold to Robbie Anderson wasn't bad. And, the whole like, seeing ghosts, like all the, whatever, blah, like, yeah, there's a lot of reason to hate on Sam Darnold, but like, he's still freakishly young. Coming out, we thought a shit ton of him, and now finding himself in Carolina, I mean, like, this is the best group of weapons he's ever had to work with. And even though this phrase is commonly used and abused, this is one scenario in which it is literally not even close. It's like, going from the Adam Gase Jets with like,
it's tough. Yeah. It's tough to get worse than that.
Yeah. So like, dude, he'll have Christian McCaffrey, fucking old teammate, Robbie Anderson and DJ Moore and like Terrace Marshall, like at his disposal, like under the tutelage of Joe Brady, like Matt Rule. Like, dude, I mean, if there's gonna be a time for shit to finally get put together for Sam Darnold, like I could see it being now. And like I have him at QB 28 in my rankings, but at the same time, like that, it doesn't mean I'm gonna be dissuaded as it pertains to like, especially like in like deeper leagues and shit. Like, sign me the fuck up, dude. I'll take a chance on that, dude. Why the fuck not? Because if it works, then like to the moon. Like, fuck it, dude.
I've got to make QB 26. I'm slightly more bullish, but his ADP is I think QB 32. So I think he is definitely a guy where if you grab him and he does well and becomes fantasy relevant, like he certainly qualifies as a sleeper. And I think so would, I think like, Derek Carr is really interesting. Honestly, just looking at the ADP, like you'd be shocked to say it, but like he's ADP right now, QB 26. And last year he finished at QB 14.
The Lateral loves Derek Carr. for what it's worth. We really do. We really do.
He is an interesting one. I would say Tua, again, going at QB 22. If he has a second year breakout, then he's automatically a great QB sleeper. And then we talked about it on our episode of the Lateral Show. I would say the grouping of Tua, Carson Wentz, Baker Mayfield, these are guys who could finish in that QB 1 range of 1 through 12 that are very cheap. I mean, again, the range that really speaks to me is Baker Mayfield QB 18, Kirk Cousins QB 19. Kirk Cousins was a QB 1 last year. Carson Wentz QB 20, Justin Fields QB 21, Tua Tagovailoa QB 22. That to me, that's your sleeper range. That's the smash. If Dave, to your point, if you're going to wait hard on QB, that's what you're waiting for.
I'm here for it. I'm absolutely here for it. And, I co-signed it when we recorded the episode, and I co-signed it again now. These are really solid names. Seriously, it's pretty hard to argue.
Okay.
Honestly.
Well, let's see if we can find a way to argue about running backs. Who is your running back sleeper for 2021?
Oh, man. I mean, it's kind of it's a bit of a lame option because,
because it's Javian Hawkins.
No, no. Although not a bad pick, but it's just people who are who follow fantasy football closely, they're already well aware of the fact that these takes swirl around. But
sure,
I feel okay. So my sleeper kind of ties into somebody that I'm a little nervous about with where they're going, and that player is Darrell Henderson Jr.
Fair.
Let's be honest. Because why did Cam Akers miss a lot of time last year? He had some really weird, gnarly rib injury. That shit just fucking sucks. It is what it is. Be what it be. Fine. Okay, whatever. But Darrell Henderson had a really good stretch last year in which he was very efficient. So, is Cam Akers going to be the lead guy in that offense as far as the rushing attack goes? Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not saying he won't be, but Darrell Henderson's not bad.
No,
he's not going away. He's going to have a role, and I don't think that's being reflected enough in some rankings that I've seen, and certainly in ADP, I don't think that's being reflected either.
So right
Darrell
now,
Henderson's going to have a very not a huge role, but a meaningful enough role to the point where it's just flex city, baby.
So right now, Darrell Henderson's ADP is RB 49. I think it's a great sleeper pick because he could have standalone value. I think might be the most valuable handcuff. He really might. And you look at some other guys, I would draft Darrell Henderson ahead of Devin Singletary, who's RB 41. I would draft him possibly ahead of Zach Moss, who's RB 39. I am very out on the Bills running backs, though. AJ Dillon, who we talk about as being a valuable handcuff, he's RB 37, which is not cheap.
Yeah.
Damian Harris, who we're not sure is going to be the starter in New England or will be the starter for the entire season in New England. He's going RB 34. There are some guys that you're paying some seat prices, and Darrell Henderson could outperform all of them. So I love that pick a lot. I am not sure.
It goes to the thing that I was saying when we were talking about how I evaluate the running back position. It's just historical tendencies, breaking down, the workload splits and all that. The way I've gone through it in my head based off of how shit has gone in the past, people and there's always you can, convince yourself of a narrative or whatever based off of those things, but there's also caveats when it comes to that. And I feel there's a weird association between what Cam Akers' potential usage could be and the fact that a lot of those numbers are kind of skewed by peak Todd Gurley being peak Todd Gurley. I don't care how much everybody and I am a fan of Cam Akers. I do think he's talented. I do think he's a wonderful player. Do I think he's peak Todd Gurley? Absolutely not. Is he going to get that percentage of that workload? Absolutely not.
Well, I wouldn't say absolutely not, because we actually saw it sustained kind of over 6 weeks, including 2 playoff games that mattered. And we talked about this in the podcast. I don't think it's impossible that he gets that workload. I really don't. I would agree that he's not peak Todd Gurley. like just from a running back talent standpoint. And I'm pretty bullish on his talent. Just like I am incredibly bullish on Wayne Gallman, who is RB 74 in PPR. This could be the starter for the San Francisco 49ers, people. I'm not exaggerating. If Raheem Mostert picks up a knock, which I think he's already flirted with this offseason, if Jeff Wilson, Jeff Wilson already did. Right. Like Trey Sermon, sure, 3rd round pick. They traded up to get him. They also brought Wayne Gallman in free agency. Shanahan loves to play a hot hand. Like Wayne Gallman could win some people some games, and you're going to pay nothing for him. Like you can get Mark Ingram at RB 76, or you can get Wayne Gallman at RB 74, or you can get Boston Scott at RB 71, LaMichael Pirine at RB 70, Darrington Evans at RB 68. Like Wayne Gallman is the clear choice out of those names I just mentioned. Another guy though that I do really like, who we sort of mentioned here, Javian Hawkins at RB 64 probably needs to be on your rosters in redraft. Just full stop. Elijah Mitchell will be interesting, by the way. He's someone to keep an eye on. I would not advocate for drafting him in a redraft league unless your league is really deep.
What about JaMychal Hasty? Come on!
I would say similar.
JaMychal Hasty!
I would say, yes, Wayne is a steal. I would say JaMychal similar to Elijah Mitchell. There's talent there. I like the player. You should not be drafting him in your redraft league unless your league is insanely deep. And then if your league is insanely deep, those are guys you should take a chance on. Like the guys you should take a chance on in insanely deep leagues are typically your best ball guys. That guy where it's like, okay, if things break really well, this person can just completely ball out. But Javian Hawkins is a guy who could take over his backfield. Is it incredibly likely? No. But I am just not buying that Mike Davis will be the starter for the Atlanta Falcons for 17 weeks. I'm not buying it at all. And I can get him probably in like one of the last 2 rounds of my draft. So I'm just going to do that.
Yeah. And, things, evolving in Atlanta, the way they are, like, as we talked about in the last episode, it's like, we still have a lot of information to learn, but like of the names that are there, the most exciting one is definitely him.
Preseason is going to shake out that running back core.
Yeah,
I think
100%. Yeah.
I think we'll get some camp. We'll get some camp buzz. We'll get some camp reports that may ultimately contribute to a starting depth chart. But Arthur Smith wants to run the ball because if you can't run the ball, you can't establish the threat of the play action. And he wants to run play action for sure.
And Matt Ryan wants to run.
Yeah.
Because even before Arthur Smith came to town, that was one of the things Matt Ryan has thrived on. It was like, check out those stats.
So if you can't establish the threat from the backfield, you cannot establish the threat of play action because then it's like, well, I don't need to stack the box against this running back. So I can just sit back. I can spy on the QB. Like maybe I'll send in one guy with the blitz and, see what happens. But otherwise, I'll just, I'll stuff them after a couple of yards because they're inefficient running backs. And Mike Davis is the definition of an inefficient running back.
I dig the analogy. I mean, yeah.
It's like people are going to spend serious draft capital to get Javonte Williams, who's RB33, and you could get similar value from Javian Hawkins at RB 64, I think pretty easily. So definitely something to keep an eye on.
I'm here
for it. Wide receiver. You got someone spicy for me at wide receiver? I'm curious.
Well, okay. Well, because here's the thing.
I kind of spoiled mine already, by the way. It's Gabe Davis. You should draft Gabe Davis. You should not wait for waivers. You should draft Gabe Davis. That's my bet.
Yeah. And if you listened to the podcast, then you would already know how I feel about Darnell to the Mooney. Yeah. But if I'm just going to go with a different name for the sake of, well, I wouldn't say just for the sake of it, I have thought about it.
Tell you what, I can pick another one too. I can actually give you 2 right now that I'm looking at.
Well, give me your other one while I take a look at who.
Let me make sure I am looking at PPR scoring. Okay, so guys that jump to mind here. So wide receiver, you're going to assume 3 wide receivers typically in a league. So your fantasy relevant guys are going to be a top 36 guy. If you want to even go a little deeper, you could go top 48. And right at 48 is Antonio Brown, which is absurd. Like, you should get Antonio Brown.
We talked a lot about this. This one's just fucking, I mean, come on.
Like, and then there's some guys, there's some serious value in that 40 to 50 range. So like Henry Ruggs III at 50 screams value. Could be the lead wide receiver on that team. Mike Williams could be the wide receiver 2 with Justin Herbert as quarterback. He's wide receiver 52. Marvin Jones, who I believe will be the wide receiver 2 in Jacksonville. I have been hammering that point home. He's wide receiver 53 in terms of ADP. You can absolutely steal him. He's a proven talent. He's done it before. Darrell Bevel is going to be the OC. He's done it with Darrell Bevel. Like, there's no reason to like not take a chance on Marvin Jones. Darnell Mooney at 55, which we had talked about. And then this guy, I did not expect to be so low. Yeah. Henry Ruggs is a wide receiver 5 is definitely like a steal, I think. I do not ever expect wide receiver 1 output from Henry Ruggs. He wasn't the most talented back in that Alabama, wide receiver in that Alabama wide receiver core that was insanely stacked, but like he's good. He's definitely got wide receiver 3 at least potential. But Rashad Bateman at wide receiver 56 is insane. Is that the guy you're going to talk about?
It is not. The thing that I was going to point out is the fact that like the thing that Ruggs really has going for him is the fact that I felt as though he was miscast in the Raiders offense.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because because I mean,
which we knew was going to happen.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's just like if we are to, hope that maybe they learned their lesson a little bit and just, give him some, shorter, routes and just like give him more open space to work with and like let him do his thing and make his moves and do all that shit. Like that's what he's better at than just being a deep threat type of dude. So just like, I don't know. There's definitely hope for somebody like a Henry Ruggs. Rashad Bateman is a very good name. I definitely with that. I brought this up on the podcast. I'll bring it up again here. Paris Campbell, just because I mean, like, injury history, blah, but
sure.
If he, for some reason he stays healthy, I mean, like, I'm still a believer in the talent. Be what it be. And then, in shit, dude, I hate spending time. And actually, this is something that was covered on the Play to Win mailbag show that I was watching before we hopped on. So shout out Nick Script, shout out Steffi Smalls. They're awesome people. They had a listener question that came in that, was just about like, how much time do you, spend focusing on like, digging deep on what we expect to be bad offenses? Like, I don't know, like not a whole lot of time, but at the same time, like somebody has to have value in a bad offense. And, Detroit is a team that I look at, and between Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rashad Perriman, and Tyrell Williams going 72, 74, and 80 respectively. Like, I'm not going to, if I had to pick, I would pick Amon-Ra.
I'd put Tyrell Williams at wide receiver 80. That one actually feels fair. Amon-Ra St. Brown, though, at 72 is a steal.
Yeah. So, like, if I'm picking somebody from that team to be able to do something like that, probably Amon-Ra, but I also like Quintus Cephas, but, probably Amon-Ra St. Brown. I think that could be interesting. Also, a couple other names, like, speaking of the Raiders, like Bryan Edwards, 83. That could be intriguing. Dwayne Eskridge right behind him at 84. I get it. Things are kind of weird in Seattle. They're probably going to try and
I will probably stay away from that one, to be honest. Unless I'm in a deep enough league that
that's definitely more of a deep league thing. Also, way more.
Same with Nico Collins.
Huge dynasty thing, though. Huge dynasty.
Yes.
That's good. Yeah. But just digging towards the bottom of the barrel. Shit. Yeah.
AJ Green at wide receiver 68 is another really interesting one, because if you tell me I can get wide receiver 68 AJ Green or wide receiver 67 Emmanuel Sanders, I'm taking AJ Green.
He looked a little statuesque last year.
I'm getting him at pick 223.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah, if things,
and he's been a wide receiver one before.
Yeah, I dig the vibe. Also, wow. Actually, here's a fun one that I'm surprised we didn't even notice when we were talking about this on the podcast. Sterling Shepard at wide receiver 75 feels disrespectful.
Yeah, it does a bit, but he's going to be the clear wide receiver 2 in that offense. There's a chance that he could be the wide receiver 3, but with a very defined role. I don't worry about him as much from an NFL perspective, but from a fantasy perspective, I have some concerns.
I just think that, like, I mean, obviously, like, investing heavily in Kenny Golladay, like, sure, it's going to be Kenny Golladay.
Yeah.
But, like, and yes, did they bring in Kadarius Toney? Sure, of course. But
I have to say, you can have Sterling Shepard at wide receiver 75, or you can have Darius Slayton at wide receiver 78. Give me Sterling Shepard every day of the week.
Fucking holy shit. Yeah.
I'm staying away from Darius Slayton. So actually, here we go. Wide receiver 77, Sammy Watkins. Wide receiver 78, Darius Slayton. Wide receiver 79, Josh Reynolds. Wide receiver 80, Tyrell Williams. Wide receiver 81, Deshaun Jackson. Wide receiver 82, Traquan Smith. These are all guys I will stay away from.
Traquan is a firm maybe, but I'm dwindling on that.
I've seen what I've seen.
Otherwise, I'm with you. I'm with you for sure. Also, Marquez Callaway, shout out Dynasty. Yeah. But I'm with you on that. You want to get to
Let's get to the tightest of ends, and then we'll wrap up this hour-ish, which we are firmly entrenched in. It's actually going quite smoothly. First one of these we've done in a while without a show sheet, in case you had not noticed.
Well, when have we used a show sheet in the past? Let's be honest.
So again, like, I like Sterling Shepard personally as a pass catcher, but I would agree that I'm like a little hesitant on him when it comes to fantasy.
I'm with you, Taco, but at the same time, 75 is still disrespectful.
I would agree. 75 is probably too low. All right, tight ends though. Who do you got, and why is it going to be Cole Kmet at tight end 23?
Because I mean, like, you know, the name that I'm sitting on that I want to talk about for the podcast episode, but also, like, fantasy footballers came out with their sleeper episode, and now the whole Everett thing's kind of out of the bag. But if I'm gonna pick somebody besides Gerald Everett, and I do look forward to having that conversation on, the next episode of the Lateral Show. Spotify, Google Podcasts, Anchor, all that shit. Check it out.
Are we on Google Podcasts now?
Oh yeah, no, I clicked the button to like share everywhere. So like,
but we're not on Apple Podcasts yet, correct? Because that is a weird approval process.
Certain things, like, we will continue to be broadcast more places as the thing processes on its own. But that's just how Sleeper works. Fun fact: peek behind the curtain of just how
Anchor,
running a podcast,
not works. Sleeper.
Yeah. There we go. Words are hard. There we go. But please listen to our podcast.
It's good stuff.
Shit, dude. Oh, it really is. Fuck, dude. There's a whole wealth of names down here, and like, I'm not gonna get into my reasoning because it will spoil the purpose of the episode. So I'm just gonna name it and drop it.
Okay.
Fucking. Oh shit. Yeah. Okay. 2 names. Cole
okay,
Kmet,
I've got 4.
And also, I have 3. Fuck. Okay. All right. Here we go. Cole Kmet, Blake Jarwin, Jared Cook.
Okay. I like all those. I think Jared Cook, I'm at current ADP, I probably won't end up with, though I like him as a potential sleeper guy. He's a little pricey right now at his ADP of tight end 19, just compared to some other guys that I'm going to list here. Right after him, you can get Adam Troutman, who is not going to suddenly get old in the middle of the season.
I didn't name him because I knew you were going to.
So I take Adam. I've got some guys in the 20 range that I love, and they are Adam Troutman, Cole Kmet. Though I want Jimmy Graham to go away. I just really do, because Cole Kmet is the better tight end there.
He kind of did toward the end of the year.
I sensed the vulture returning.
That is true. And we will get more into that for sure. That is a concern.
Gerald Everett at tight end 25, still a great value. And then Blake Jarwin at tight end 27 for sure. If you are in the deepest of leagues or in some best ball leagues and you want to like take a absolute home run shot on a guy though, because we're not really going to get into this guy, I think, in the tight end episode, so I will mention him. OJ Howard at tight end 29 could be a potential league winner. If
entirely possible.
If he comes back healthy. It's a tough injury. I am not saying you should spend anything significant on it. But if we hear good things, if we see good things, he could end up being the tight end 1 rather than Rob Gronkowski who is currently tight end 13.
And he was a nuisance at the beginning of the year before the injury.
I am out at Rob Gronkowski at tight end 13. To me, it's just like I would like OJ Howard healthy could end up being the top tight end in that depth chart.
For sure. Yeah. No, insanely talented. I think in like several efficiency metrics, especially like per year. I don't know, whatever. Like definitely with
it. He had what do you have? The highest A dot of any tight end? Was that like kind of the big metric that was floating around?
It was like that coupled with another thing that was like super good. But also in not really a name to throw out that we won't cover in the podcast, but it's just like for me, like something we're probably not going to talk about, but I do want to at least speak into existence.
Dan Arnold, tight end 46.
I do love the mailman, but not quite. Actually, low-key Dan Arnold, maybe. Deep leagues.
Scott Fishbowl. But if you want a Scott Fishbowl tight end that you're going to take a like complete like dart throw on, Dan Arnold is absolutely that dart throw.
I'm here for it. Yeah.
But I mean dart throw. Like this isn't even like blackjack. Like this is literally blindfolded dart throw. Like pick up a Dan Arnold, see if it sticks.
Exactly. But the thing I did want to mention, historically, looking back at just like his tenure, like just as like a coach of any like major capacity, Frank Reich offenses, they fuck with the tight end. They target that position a lot. Now, it's complicated because there are a few names in there with Jack Doyle, Mo Alley Cox, and the Kylan Granson. Is it? It's whatever the fuck that dude.
Just say Zach Ertz. Get to the point. Get to the point. There, it's like
so, especially like I mean that could be fucking huge or whatever. But also like also like shout out. Not a fan of plagiarism. I mean, like I heard about this listening to Sirius XM radio on my way to work today. So, like, trust me, like I'm not claiming that I did the research for this. Full disclosure, always. Herms is an honest man, but at the same time, like, but even anecdotally speaking, I probably would have been able to come up with a similar take, just because, like, like I watch stuff, and like Frank Reich likes having things go to tight ends and shit.
He does.
So, like. Yeah, I mean, fuck it.
For me, my big concern is I don't know what tight end that would be. If they pick up Zach Ertz, I know it will be Zach Ertz. So that's what I'm kind of.
If Zach Ertz comes to town, it's fucking game over.
Yeah, like
that shit would be tight.
I can't believe he's going to stay in Philly. I just can't.
It's a.
I don't think either
a weird situation.
I don't think either party wants him to stay there. But I think they think he's really valuable and they'll get something.
Yeah, because he demanded the fucking trade before the deadline, if I remember that report correctly, right? Like, I mean, homeboy does not want to be in Philadelphia. What the fuck? Like, bro.
All right, well, I'll end the show on one last piece of tight end advice, and then we will plug the stuff. Stay away from the Bengals tight ends. I don't think Drew Sample is all that special. CJ Uzoma is actually I think the starting tight end when healthy, but the problem is he's never going to be fully healthy this season because he's coming off an Achilles tear that happened mid-season. So it's just, and whoever it will be like the wide receiver 5 essentially on that team.
Yeah, and plus it's Zach
just
Taylor,
stay away.
Sean McVay coaching tree. We all know what that shit is. Blah blah blah. I mean 3 wide receiver sets. That's the fucking move. That's what they do. Yeah.
You just missed it, by the way, Austin. We said Dan Arnold, great dart throw if you're in a deeper league.
The mailman. Seriously.
Not worth the draft capital. All right. Well, that's the show. We've hit our hour-ish. Hour 23, not too shabby. Hey. You want to plug what you got going on? I'll plug what I got going on, which is basically the same stuff because it is the lateral meets the lateral here.
That is true. It's like what's the fucking Nick Cage, John Travolta
Face Off?
Right, yeah. But anyways, weird movie references aside, I am Herms at Herms NFL on the Twitter. I feel like I'm holding in a sneeze because this is the part where I plug the lateral, but you're gonna do that because you're the host. So it's, okay, shit. Love you. Glad you tuned in, buddy. So at Herms NFL, you can find me on Rumboys After Dark on Friday nights, which is tomorrow. So I'm going to be doing that. That's going to be cool. Rumboys Fantasy Network. I mean, seriously, tons of cool shit coming out over there. I don't know. It's a vibe. It's a fucking vibe. Have you ever seen it before?
It's definitely a vibe.
It's a oh boy.
That is meant with all the love in the world.
Oh yeah, no. So that shit's cool. Yeah, I mean, I got some other things cooking. It's mostly just look out for new podcast theme songs that I'm composing for people. Because if the Cooter Doodles, Petite Pods, the show with Sam Wagman, podcast with Upside with our homies, G-Men J and Eagle Dan FF. It's just like you've heard the music stylings of your boy. I'm gonna be doing some more stuff, so I guess that's a thing that I can tease, kind of. So yeah, you're gonna be hearing more of my podcast theme songing. I've decided that that's an appropriate thing to say. So there we go, making up words.
Love it. And
so
even
you're gonna plug the other shit. So
yes, so it is I, your host McLateral, aka McLateral FF on the Twitter. You can find me there. You can find me at thelateralff.com. I am going to drop at least one article this week. I have a column that I've been working on. I'm going to drop that at some point tomorrow. It will get done. That is going to be a thing. I also have my Perfect Draft series that I'm working on. I'm trying to get 2 parts of that in the bank before I go on vacation. Hopefully release one of them this week, one of them next week. My goal is to release the column and the Perfect Draft series 1 per week until we get to the beginning of the season. In July, we're going to have our rankings drop. We are going to have an episode of The Lateral Show, our flagship podcast, drop next week. So look out for that.
Tight ends, baby.
There will be no weekly variety hour-ish because I'm going to be on vacation, but rest assured, I have not been idle. I've already got guests for July 8th when we make the return. They are very awesome guests. You will have to stay tuned to see who they are, though.
Teaser, baby.
I am excited for these guests. They are some names you should know. And speaking of some names you should know, real quick, had a thread out earlier today about PTs, athletic trainers, docs in the fantasy biz that you should follow. So go check that out. It's on my profile somewhere. But it's been floating around. If you follow me, you should have come across it at some point. There's a lot of names on there. Following these guys is going to give you an edge when you play fantasy football. Highly recommend going through, following the people there. But that is it. That is the show. We out. Wait. Herms. I just realized you're here.
Yeah.
Should we do mouth sounds?
Mouth sounds.
Mouth sounds.
It's the Lateral Show on a live stream instead of a podcast. The Lateral Show.